Welcome to From the Ashes, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast all about Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Bear witness to the rebirth of the MMORPG genre from the ashes of an industry that has left the gamers behind. I am Aggelos, and I am back for our third Phoenix Roundtable, our community segment where we get other members from the Ashes of Creation community together, and we talk about things that are of interest. And this week we have well, it's a doozy of a topic, and I can tell you I'm a little nervous about it because this is so out of my area of expertise. But that's okay, because I brought some people on the show who hopefully know what they're talking about. No, I'm just kidding. All these people here are awesome, and this is kind of like their field of study, field of work, careers, all that fun stuff. So we should have a fun conversation for you. First up, you know him because I never cease to bring him on a show, it feels like. The errant penman himself, Isarii. How are you?
I'm good. And don't worry, I'm very good at pretending I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Should we do like a professional background for this show? It's probably going to inform the way we talk. Not like a LinkedIn list, but I'm an accountant. You know, just that level.
Yeah, there you go. That's fine.
Okay, I'm an accountant.
Yes, there you go. He's an accountant. I guess we probably should have prefaced all this by saying this entire conversation is going to be theory crafting about the stock exchange and economies in MMOs. So this is why I brought financial people onto the show. Next up, we have Atropos, the creator of Tamriel, Foundry, and an soon-to-be-announced Ashes of Creation project. How are you, sir?
Thanks, Aggelos. I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
To emulate Isarii there, I guess by day I am an economist, and by weekend I'm an avid MMO gamer. So hopefully I'll bring something from both of those to the chat.
Excellent. And the voice you probably heard from around the Ashes of Creation community, he's all over the place, and he's also the voice behind Journal of Ashes community participation channel and founder of Heavenly Sword Gaming. That is Truth Eternal. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited about this topic. And just for background reasons, I am a, what do I do? Corporate finance. We'll just call it that.
Corporate finance. Wow. I am so out of my element.
It's all good. We love you.
I am a system administrator, so I deal with servers. That's all I care about. So that's,
You're the guy who knows how to edit a podcast.
That is true. It's the only reason why I'm here, because I can edit podcasts. All right, we might as well just go ahead and jump right on into the Phoenix Roundtable and the stock exchange. Now, we have a few talking points that we are going to hit, and I'm pretty much going to let these guys kind of just jump right in there. But one of the first questions that we had that we kind of want to springboard off of is, what makes a good MMO economy? What do you guys actually like or dislike from other games that you're hoping will be prevalent in Ashes? Sorry, why don't you go ahead and just jump right on here?
Okay. I am going to use this like I always do with open-ended questions to talk about Star Wars Galaxies.
Everyone drink.
I'm gonna go with this. Yeah, it's not really a financial background perspective, but I guess my answer would be the best MMO economies are the ones that have the highest degree of connectivity between the most players. The more any agent in an economy relies on other people to finish what they're doing, as is enforced by specialization, basically complexity of resources and how hard they are to gather, how different they are from each other. And I suppose customization. You have to be able to stand out somehow. The best economies are the ones like Star Wars Galaxies, where every piece of gear can be different. And it's not just, you made, the chest of the barbarian, and that's the same as everybody else's who made that, irrespective of what materials you put into it and in what quantities. So I'm going to say the ability for players to stand out and actually be someone in the economy instead of just being a cog in a wheel. Wheels don't have cogs. A cog in a machine.
I think a cog is a wheel, to be honest. But anyway, that's semantics.
I was close.
Yeah, absolutely. And Atropos, how about you, sir?
Cool, yeah. I think Isarii made some good points. He stole one of mine, sort of. But I think, any game where as the player progresses through their individual arc with the game, as they grow in power, games where the further you get on that power curve, the more invested you become in like a multiplayer economy, the more invested you become in needing to rely on and interact with other players. I think in some games where the economies is not so interesting, as you invest in your own character, as you like master all these different trade skills, you kind of buy out of the massive nature of the economy. Like you can replace interaction with other players by just building characters that can do everything yourself. I think that's one thing that isn't a huge like for me. I think games where commodities are really interesting and have multiple uses is both like a like when it's done well and a dislike when it's not. I think like for me, it's not really an MMO, but a game like Path of Exile for me is kind of like one of the gold standards for multiplayer RPG economy, because they have so many interesting currencies and commodities that all have multiple uses, and they're all grounded in their NPC economy system in a way that like market's clear. All the currencies have like a maintained exchange rate. The whole system really makes sense, and it makes it easy for players to drive things forward. And like the flip side of that is I like hate it when games put in currencies or commodities where there's like really only one use. Like you can harvest leather, but the only thing you can use leather for is to like craft a certain type of boot that you can vendor or something. But there's nothing else to do with it. And so then as demand and supply changes over time, sometimes certain commodities like become grossly oversupplied or undersupplied, and it's like the game doesn't provide good systems for things to be exchanged around and to move around in a way that keeps things fresh and keeps players engaged. Anyways, I'm sure I'll talk about more of some of that stuff later, but I guess that's a couple things.
To go off on our first tangent, kind of having a similar discussion about that kind of thing the other day, and I was talking about questing and questing actually being interested, which is another one of my soapboxes. But one of the points I was raising was I prefer when I really kind of dislike the idea of a quest item, especially if it's something that's abused like it is in most modern MMOs, and not like a situation where it makes sense that you're going for like the head of Yogg-Saron or something, where sure, that could be a quest item. But it sort of breaks any consistency in the world. And you see this a lot in ESO, where it feels like the rules of the economy, the rules of magic, the rules of what items exist and what they're capable of don't make any sense. And I think one way to sort of both make the economy more interesting and make your questing and crafting and just everything more interesting is to actually use real items that have a real purpose in the world, that maybe you can still give away to obtain them in a quest. You know, you obtain some leather boots that you need to provision an army or something. I don't know. Maybe there's a way you can go talk to NPC X across the world, or you could just craft them if you're capable of doing that yourself. You know, make it a real item that has purposes rather than just being specifically for that quest.
Right, and this is actually awesome that I can actually bring this up, because Truth, you'll probably remember this as well. It was, I think, the last Twitch stream they did before the end of Kickstarter, where they showed some of the gameplay and they were hunting the meat that was out there. Right, and they specifically said, "Oh, here's you had to kill the deer meat and get it and bring it back, but it was an actual item." He's like, "Oh, or I could just cook it." And take it from there. And that concept within Ashes of Creation, being able to have quest items that have additional effects. My first thought is when I went into the Discords afterwards talking about it, I'm like, that's awesome, because it's one of those things, if I was out there farming, collecting meat to cook for dinner, coming into town and go, oh, this guy has a quest where I need you to get me 10, deer steaks. I'm like, well, I already have some right here. So, there you go. I do like that as well. And to bounce off of Atropos' point with the idea of crafting, specialization being something that is important. I mean, this is something like that we're doing right here. We're evident in this podcast itself. The specializations of the people bringing in. Not everyone can do everything. I'm a system administrator. I have my specializations. No. Well, Atropos can maybe do everything, but... that we all have whatever our niche is, it seems, and you can be a jack of all trades in some cases, but those people generally are, they say jack of all trades, master of none. If you want to do a little bit of everything, you can, but it's not going to be highly specialized. So that is very important in these type of games. Now, Truth, how about you, sir?
Yeah. So you guys hit all on the specific game points I wanted to bring up. So I don't want to beat that dead horse. But I guess there's one main thing that I look for in any video game economy, really, and that's how well does it emulate kind of an actual economy. And in my mind, there are there are a few things that are kind of trickier when you're trying to emulate a real economy. One of the things that you're dealing with is that scarcity is not true in a video game world, and there is true scarcity in the real world. So having to emulate scarcity is a very, very tricky thing. And I know they've talked to this in the past with, different nodes you'd gather from not be just in the same place and then reappearing. They move around. They might not be in the same place. So they're using location and these other things to speak to scarcity, which is great. The other thing, and you've already hit on a little bit, there needs to be some inherent value of resources, right? The thing I'm holding has to do something else, and it has to do that. Otherwise, you're collecting these blobs, and who really cares? And then the final thing, and I think probably one of the most important things, is a short-term versus kind of long-term market health. It's so easy to think of things just only in the short term in these games, but as more things enter the economy, there's going to be this need to take them out as well, right? You need to match inputs and outputs to keep things interesting. So really, those are the things that I certainly look for the most. And bringing on an economist, certainly for Intrepid, is going to help a lot with that.
By the way, that idea that something needs to exit has been oddly controversial, I've noticed, in discussion
Weird, right?
areas in the past. Yeah. I don't know if... Yeah, okay. So I guess we have no gold sink detractors here. What about
it's not just you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So okay. That's an indefensible position.
An indefensible position. All right.
It might be something we can comment on, but since we all agree, maybe it's not such an interesting debate. But
I can play devil's advocate. What's the what?
No.
What are we talking about?
We'll come back to it later.
All right.
Like one thing that Drew said that I wanted to piggyback on, and before I forget, is that he mentioned the sort of long-term health and how the economy evolves over time. It's super important, and one of the things that I've seen in games that just drives me up a wall is, as over time, if there becomes this unreconcilable wedge between the player economy and the NPC economy of the game. So you've got NPCs in cities that are selling swords and horses and house deeds and travel costs and all the services that NPCs are programmed to provide, because some game developer at some point hard-coded in a static price for what this thing costs, and it's just been that way since the game launched. And the price of stuff in the NPC world of the game just becomes totally out of sync with what the actual currency that players are exchanging is worth, and it just kind of causes things to devolve in my mind in a way that's really pulls me out of the game. And I'm not even really an immersion super enthusiast like some people are, but that's one thing that is a huge pet peeve of mine.
I feel like theme parks, sort of in the vein of WoW, just have no idea what to do with their crafting economy and things like that.
No.
Just because sort of you can't have that be of any real value while still having gear progression based PvE progression. And so they've just sort of have it existing on its own while everything that's coming from NPCs is also doing its own thing, and they don't interplay at all.
Right. Yeah. If you're going to price things in a market, if you're going to price things in a market, you got to price things in a market. That's just the end of it.
Yeah. So what you end up with is just NPC items that are useless. They're just completely useless.
Well, or on the flip side, you get the vendor trash legendary or something, where there's all kinds of bad outcomes that can happen.
Well, come to think of it, item drops are also part of the NPC economy, so to speak, where you've got a boss drop. Not really in terms of price, but in terms of value.
Yeah.
Well, I guess when you're speaking, and this is something that I'm going to bring up from Ashes of Creation, the thing that kind of makes me think about item price and even crafting price and drop prices, the problem with World of Warcraft and vendor trash is that those things were designed to be at an early level as you go forward, but then it was so quickly replaced by dungeon and raid loot and things of that nature. And while we know there's going to be dungeons and raids in this game, crafting is going to be a big thing, and items break in this world.
Yep.
That's a killer. I mean, I'm sitting there, okay, I got my legendary sword of, amazingness, right? It breaks. I have nothing else. I'm in the middle of wherever and I'm at a closest town or whatever. Maybe I will pick up an NPC sword because it's it doesn't compare with what I had before, but at least I have something to swing at now.
And gear in any item economy with breakage just tends to be looked at from a completely different standpoint. It's almost more equivalent to a consumable than it would be to your raid progression gear. It's just a tool. Right. And usually there's a lot less variance in terms of item power as a result.
I don't know, have any of you guys played a game where the level of entropy in terms of gear degradation has been like that severe though? I mean, I'm
still meaning to play Breath of the Wild.
But,
I was going to say, that's about it, yeah.
Now, but you got to look at Breath of the Wild as something that's meant to be played in hundreds of hours, not thousands of hours.
Yeah. No, I was just making a joke at that one.
No, that one's literally like 3 swings and the thing breaks. I watched Thais do it.
I think the only games I've played where things are going away really quickly, it's more a result of like the death penalty itself than, it disappearing in terms of swings. And, that could be like a full loot game where, let's say every time you die, 30% of your items just break.
Yeah.
And I mean, that won't be that kind of big drop, but.
Right. I mean, my suspicion with gear degradation for Ashes is that it's going to be like a little drain on the economy, and like it's a way for them to have, a small amount of gold or resources or whatever being sent to NPC smiths or player blacksmiths as a way to repair items that will slowly degrade. And eventually, some items will like disappear completely, but I'll be surprised if it's more of actually like an item drain on the economy as opposed to just sort of a currency drain.
And repairs as well. Yeah, that's kind of what I was seeing too. I see Ashes, and I know this is unfair to get on early on. I make a lot of Arcade comparisons, and I think Arcade did a lot of. And by the way, I really like Arcade. I think it did a lot of interesting things that worked before they ruined it with monetization. But one of the sort of signatures of Arcade was that it was really a theme park sort of simulating sandbox element in it. And I could see that being the way they go with sort of item degradation, where, you do have permanent decay, but you can mostly repair it. It's not this hardcore system that's like beating you over the face. But, maybe they'll have you go to I know this is going to be possible, but maybe the only way to get like a permanent repair will be to get it from a player. So it's not full on item decay where it's gone forever and ever, but it would have a social loop to it, which I would appreciate.
I actually do think it's going to be full item decay. And the one game that I played, and this was a while ago, Dark Age of Camelot had this, where you had 2 levels of decay on an item. You had the item's durability and the item's condition. Condition was what you had to do to repair. As the condition of the item went down, that's where you would take it to either an NPC vendor or a PC player. Again, now this game was old, so these things aren't really here. But every time that you repaired its condition, okay, it would back up to 100%, you would lose durability. When the durability hit 0, the item literally disintegrated and could not be used again. It was gone. It was gone from the economy. Now, these items still lasted a while.
Long time.
Yeah, like
but yes,
several months of I wouldn't say several months, 2 or 3 months worth of heavy use before its condition went to nothing. But that was the only game that I really played that had that level of item decay outside of Ultima Online, where you could just die and have your stuff stolen. That was more the item decay.
It's really
and
interesting.
That's not it exiting the economy, by the way. That's just you losing your shit.
Well, it did decay if you couldn't pick up your body.
Sorry, I don't know if that was an Ultima comment or a Dayak comment that you were making.
I was referring to a situation where someone takes the gear from you.
Oh, yeah, no, never mind then. But like as far as Dayak, just super brief tangent. One thing that was really interesting about that game is that Mythic actually sort of moved away from that system over time, which
with Trials of Atlantis.
Yeah, with Trials, and they really moved away from like heavy gear degradation. So I'll be really interested to see how Ashes handles that, since they do have more focus on like a core PvE mechanic, at least allegedly, than Dayak did certainly pre-TOA.
Well, the thing even with TOA, it was only after TOA came out, and I'm going to play on this tangent because I played a lot at Dark Age of Camelot. The item effect or the item decay actually even stayed in the game, with the exception of the artifact.
With the exception of every piece of equipment that you used, really, in reality.
Yeah, by the time the meta, okay. Well, arguing the fact that the meta literally became a thing in every slot. an
Right.
artifact in every slot. Originally, those artifacts are something you could only get one time. Once you did it, that was it for that character. You could not get another one. There was no drop because it was as long, I don't want to say quest line, but you had to gather a part of it, then you had to get books to power it up that dropped off of, you know, monsters out in the world, and it being open world, people farmed them heavily. Regardless, they decided, okay, we don't like the fact that these artifacts that you can only get one time degrade and break. There's still a level of what I'm thinking, even with these legendary items, if they do introduce some sort of legendary item into the game, that there will be a way of repairing it, even if it breaks to the point where it becomes unusable legendary sword. If you somehow or another get another legendary item off of a boss, like, oh, you killed this legendary boss and now there's an ingot behind it that you can now use to either make a new sword or repair your old one, you essentially had to do the same effort again in order to get it. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's cool. Cool idea.
All right, so how does
Sort of Dark Souls-y.
Dark Souls-y, yeah, indeed. How does employing economists help Intrepid? I'm going to start from the bottom this time, and that's going to go to Truth.
Well, I think the main way, obviously, is that he's going to be having this discussion with the creative director, right? I mean, I don't know what else to even really say. He's going to be worrying about scarcity, inputs, outputs. He's going to be finding ways to do things like, oh, there's the Linder truffle. He's going to be doing things like, you know, talking about durability loss. He's going to be talking about, certainly taxes are going to be a big part of this, especially with regards to upkeep of nodes and social organizations and guild castles, things like that. So, I mean, the value he brings is just that it's going to be discussed at all, and we're not going to get these kind of theme parky, you know, things like WoW with their vendor trash items.
Right. And Atropos.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. I think one thing that's like less glamorous, but also probably very important, is the business side of the services that a industry economist can bring to a company like Intrepid, because, you know, they've got to make a lot of investment decisions as far as their business model and their subscriber base goes, and as well as thinking about market design within the game. There's going to be a lot of stuff outside the game as far as like tracking subscription and what types of features actually have like a positive impact on player retention or player acquisition. These sorts of models are things that economists are relatively good at estimating. So that's probably like a very valuable service that he will be able to provide to Intrepid as a company that can hopefully help their game to be successful, which for the players has like kind of a knock-on benefit. But like as far as like the actual in-game stuff, with which probably everyone cares about, you know, a lot more than kind of the nerdy like backroom modeling business side of things. I think thinking a lot about the trade-offs in the systems that are designed as far as what's going to cause markets to clear and what's going to result in commodities that preserve their value over time. I think it sounds to me like Ashes is thinking, you know, they want to encourage they want to create systems that have dynamism in the world, and part of that is choosing what kind of resource nodes to spawn and where, choosing what kind of events to trigger. And it's possible that certain events might have an impact on the value of commodities, or at least their supply. It's possible that certainly choosing to spawn not like nodes, but resource nodes within the world is going to have a big impact on the supply of different commodities. And that may also interact with the seasons mechanics. So I think like there's going to be a lot of tools available to someone who can think from a market design perspective about how and when to inject additional resources into the game world in a way that can cause both existing resources to retain the desired value that Intrepid wants them to have, as well as to you know, inject additional supply for resources that are maybe over demanded, or, you know, just play with the market mechanics in a way that can be automated and integrated in with the actual dynamism of the game experience.
Right. You know, and I was thinking about that. Now, how do you think that's going to affect on the fact that this is not a global economy, even on a server-to-server basis? Even if you have the metropolis, that is, or even if all 5 metropolis happen to be economic nodes, which would have some sort of larger regional auction house, do you think they're actually going to get that in depth to look at the different servers and go, wow, the price of iron up in the northern hemisphere is a lot lower because there's such an abundance of it versus down over here?
Call me a skeptic, but I doubt that even in the absence of a global auction house that we won't have global market clearing prices. Players find a way. I mean, I could be surprised. Maybe the travel time and travel mechanics within Ashes will be so significant and so interesting that there will actually be regional price variation. I wouldn't expect that to be the case. To me, the economic metropolis that adds a global auction house, that's going to be more of a convenience layer rather than like a really gameplay defining characteristic. But, I could be surprised.
And playing with that skeptic part, and I'll get to you in a second, Isarii, one of the things that they mentioned, which I'm not real fond of, because I'm not sure, again, this will have to play as we get into the game and find out. One of the things they mentioned is people, obviously the people who play MMOs like solo games, which do you not know what an MMO is, but that's beside the point. Mm-hmm. They're asking about, do I need caravans and things if I'm, trying to take care of myself? And one of the Q&As, I think I can't remember the exact one. I think it was one of the last ones. They're like, you'll be able to carry enough resources on yourself that you'll be able to take care of yourself. And that kind of worries me in that regard, because that does create that travel problem. It's one thing if you cannot carry hardly any resources and you have to do a caravan for almost anything. Of course, that is going to cause regional pricing because, all right, we have to guard a caravan from this city to this city to here to get it all over the place, especially if there's an absence of this said material in whatever region of the world you're at. But being able to carry that level on a player outside of a caravan, that does two things. One, it doesn't, it removes the much slower travel of the caravan system. And two, it sort of negates the loss factor. And that's because while you're traveling by yourself, you are technically a non-combatant. So attacking a non-combatant makes you a criminal in Ashes of Creation. But if it was a caravan, that's a moving PvP zone where it's a free-for-all. If you enter that area and you're guarding or attacking that caravan, you're combatants. And therefore, go ahead.
I feel like you're really heavily reading into what's essentially a platitude here. We have no idea what you'll be able to take care of yourself really means. Like, is he saying that you'll be able to carry enough resources to craft one set of gear? And is that really material in the scope of the grand economy? I think we know players are going to be able to carry quite a bit, because otherwise gatherers would be just bored out of their goddamn mind having to go back to the bank every time they went to a node. Yeah, they'd be like, and I mean like an old school node where that, you hit the rock 3 times, your inventory's full, you got to go back. They're going to have to be able to carry, let's say 20, 30 minutes of gathering time worth of materials just to make it worth their while.
Not. Remember one of the Kickstarter rewards was that, what is it? It's not the Moonstrider or whatever, which is technically a carry mount.
Yeah, carry mounts, though, are included in his statement about what you can carry as an individual, I would assume. Because that is you as an individual.
True. Yeah, it is. But carry mounts then add in, they may be slower. They're obviously not going to be a fast way of fast travel, obviously, because they're pack mules. It's kind of like the UO version of pack mules. You didn't ride a pack mule. Pack mule was slow. It just meant to carry stuff. But here's a curious question.
And that also makes you a target.
Yeah, it did. Yes, it did.
If you're wearing one of those.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, not wearing.
I want, and that's where I think gatherers will have pack animals. Will pack animals count as technically a tiny caravan and therefore become a combat zone?
Probably not.
No way.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for some hardcore stuff here. I would.
But you can still just kill them.
You could,
True.
But then you have your corruption value. I'm always trying to game the system.
They clearly
that's never stopped anyone in the past.
They clearly want to keep PvP as like a voluntary opt-in thing, and there's no way that they would make it where using your carry capacity mount flags you for PvP. As I agree, it'd be cool, but not going to happen.
I guess I just have my dreams. I don't know. I think it could, because it's still an opt-in mechanic. Your choice of carrying it out. It's the same as doing caravans. It doesn't matter. The people who come into this game thinking I'm going to be able to do anything without the risk of PvP, the thing is, the deterrent for PvP is not what you're doing. You could be sitting out there, Atropos, picking flowers, alt tabbed out, working on your stuff, and I could come up and stab you in the face. I would get corruption for it, but I could do it.
I'd alt tab back in and kill you.
Okay. Well, then you would get corruption. No, I think actually if we fight back, I don't remember how that goes. It does, but that's still a level of people thinking, as long as I don't join these PvP areas, I'm not going to get attacked. Not true. At least not from everything they've
correct.
said. Yeah,
that is correct. But I guess I view the caravans as like a high risk, high reward mechanic where, like maybe you can carry sufficient resources on your person to maintain your own equipment and craft stuff for other players. But just because you can carry 100 bars of iron, maybe to upgrade a node to the next level is going to require 500,000 bars of iron. And that's where the caravan comes in as like the only way to transport those sorts of resources en masse in a way that's going to be sufficient for like node development. Maybe I'm not thinking about it clearly, but I'm sort of associating the caravan system with the process by which nodes are going to upgrade. Is that how you guys are thinking about that?
I think that's been rather explicitly put.
That has been explicitly put, but I actually think it's multifold.
I think it has more. Yes,
yeah.
More. Yeah, it's more than just that.
Wouldn't it be interesting if the NPC vendors, like, okay, you're carrying your iron ore, whatever, to the city. It helps upgrade the city, but it also goes towards the vendors being able to repair things. If you had a shortage of ore to a node and you go to repair, hey, my sword's broken. Can you help me? And they're like, yeah, no, there's an ore shortage and we cannot repair your gear because we have no raw material with which to repair your gear with.
I do think there's a lot of potential for us to see something like that in the city management portion of a node.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if it's going to come down to gear repair. But it'd be cool.
They'd be in a lot of trouble for sure.
Well, I mean, that's a level of economy that you would need with this. Without that level of resource management, even on a personal level.
Yeah, even Eve doesn't have that.
Scrub game Eve, get on this level. No, I love you for that. But wouldn't that be interesting to repair gear? I don't think repair gear should just be a money thing where you throw money. You need to have a raw. If I broke something, all right, if I broke one of my swords that I have laying over there, I don't just go to a vendor and go, here's $5, repair it magically. They would have to take a raw material and infuse it into whatever else to fix it in most cases.
I mean, I don't know about that. Like, wouldn't a blacksmith in a city have the resources to make that repair, provided that you can pay for it?
I don't know. Did the last caravan get there with all the...
Yeah, right. Sure. Right. No, exactly. So, I mean, I think it's a cool idea to play it into the city management angle, but like,
agreed.
If the economy is healthy, then an iron bar and 100 pieces of gold can be interchangeable. I think it's like when the health of the economy really starts to degrade, that exactly how you're paying for certain services really tends to start mattering. And I mean, I mentioned Path of Exile at the beginning of the program. Like when you're trading with someone for something, there's like 10 different types of currencies you can use to pay for it, and people are generally okay taking any denomination of currency as long as you provide the appropriate amount. Like I think that would be a great outcome for the health of the economy in Ashes if like someone was willing to accept payment in either gold or some variety of other commodities.
Right, but even in the pay or the repair process, we'll say there still needs to be the raw material for the repair, whatever it would be.
Sure.
And the payment coming in, whatever that would be.
We're coming up to a system design philosophy question here, which is simulating that kind of material throughput through a game economy would be a ton of work for a system that would probably only be experienced by, I don't know, dozens of players who are actually involved with the city, like budgetary management in this world of spreadsheets you're imagining. And whether or not there's a fun factor involved in having that kind of granularity in managing a node itself is another question. This is, question. Again, a big, I think, divergence between the way you design a game economy and the way the real world actually works. You could very much say, we have to feed our people, and if not, players drop dead permanently. But we could do that. It'd be realistic, but people probably wouldn't like it.
Depends on the player. I mean, I think I'd like it, but anyway. And I'm not looking at this.
Only if we could eat the rich.
Only if you could. Maybe. Human, the other white meat. You guys are still looking, like you said, with only having tens of players or whatever being able to experience this on a meta level. Yes, on a big scale. But what about the freeholds? I think there is still a level of player urgency on the smaller level as well. The local blacksmith shop, the independent, the capitalism shop, if you will, who's not supplying the free handouts from your socialist republic city over here, still needs to have his raw materials in order to create things. And let's go ahead and roll right into the next question, because I think we kind of are discussing this in this regard. Yeah. What do you think the big picture for how Ashe's economy will actually function? Obviously, pretty much everything we just said kind of would flow into that, but sorry, why don't you kind of take that and roll?
I guess for me, the central picture or the central question at what creates the big picture of an MMO economy is, what is the primary ingress of equipable items into the economy? And that was one of my first questions I asked Stephen when I was interviewing him. Was where are these coming from? And I got an answer that I felt it was a bit wishy. It was not super pinned down, unfortunately. But basically, they've said both. We're going to see items entering the economy from a monster drop perspective as well as crafted, and they will apparently be competitive with each other, which might be something that happens. Have we seen that actually work before?
ESO was the closest one I ever seen to that, but it was just that you could get to the quality, technically the same damage or defense value, but when you got down to the set value, there was always a difference where one was always better than the other.
Although actually ESO is a good example of this, because there are certain sets that are crafted, certain sets that are dropped, and it's not like monster sets are always better or crafted sets are always better. Monster sets, that's not exactly what I meant, but that's a specific thing in ESO. You're very much able to mix and match those. I'm using, I believe, 5 crafted, and then everything else that I'm currently using in ESO is entering from the NPC item economy, so to speak. So that could be one way, I guess, is just make them different but theoretically equivalent.
Atropos, let me pose this question to you. What do you feel about... No, this is Atropos. You already had your say. I'm getting other people in here, but I'm playing off of what you said. Difference between crafted and monster drops. What if monster drops are not actual usable items in their normal state, where you have to take them to a crafter to refine them?
I could be down with that. I think in general, I like systems where the NPC drop is only part of the gear picture, and that there is a player-driven component to either reinforcing or upgrading that item. So, whether it's in a totally raw state or whether there's just some opportunity to improve the equipment that you get from PvE encounters, I think in either of those cases, I think that's a good outcome. Isarii was talking about ESO. I think ESO does a fair job. I think, in my opinion, and this is probably only my opinion, I think I might be in the minority here, but I think one of the things that holds the interest level of ESO's itemization system back is its, in my opinion, over-reliance on sets. When you have a game where everything is about sets, you really only have 3 choices, whereas with the same number of equipment slots in ESO, if there weren't sets, you'd have 12 choices. And I think I don't really like that, because I feel like a strong reliance on set-based itemization kind of detracts from the interest level. I feel like, we were talking about Daok before. That was, I think, a kind of nice example where itemization in Daok was kind of like a jumble of mismatched puzzle pieces where you could never completely you could never totally complete the puzzle using NPC or PvE equipment alone. You could only complete part of the puzzle, and then you would really have to fill in the holes in your template using player-crafted gear. And I think, there's many ways to design a system, whether it's like making items better or just filling in pieces of your template. But I just hope they have something. I hope it's not all one or all the other.
My issue with the ESO system is the upgrade component, which was pretty neat at the start, eventually just degraded to a raw map farm, and it wasn't much. Like it didn't really require anyone of any special level in order to get it. I mean, putting a little bit of time in to get a few points into tempering expertise, which you didn't even really need in order to upgrade, it didn't really feel as impactful. Truth, what would you feel like, and I'm not real fond on just the upgrade, but what if it were a way of implementing a monster drop into an already blueprinted recipe, right? Like, I don't know, let's say you're a jewelry crafter, for instance, and you kill a dragon and a dragon fang drops. They could then take that and add it to their standard, copper choker, but the dragon fang would have an additional effect. But based on the level of expertise that a crafter would have, say they had to specialize in using, I don't know, animal parts in their jewelry or whatever in order to make this effective, do you feel like that would affect the crafted economy needing to find a player to augment an already existing recipe and having a certain level of
sure. I mean, to Isari's kind of, I guess, pleasure, that would be a great way to obviously layer in some more interactivity, right? That's what it does. Something like that would also kind of increase, I guess, the velocity of all these kinds of resources from all different drop points, which is something that's good, right? That contributes to the output, right? What's exiting the economy. So that's certainly as fine a way as any, but I guess we are still just kind of talking about design in general, how they actually decide to do this really in practice, and we just don't know.
Yeah. I was thinking that we weren't quite getting into economy here yet.
Yeah,
I do want to say one thing about drop reagents, though, before we get too far away from that topic. I think at that point what you're doing is you're effectively turning combat-focused characters and PvEers into a gathering class of their own. And if that's the route you're going to go, I think it's important that people who are specialized in killing bosses and clearing dungeons should not necessarily be effective at gathering, and gatherers likewise shouldn't be that effective at PvE. It can't just be a situation where everybody can be an effective gatherer like in WoW, but only some people have access to dungeons, whether it be skill or something else. There should be skills governing how effective you are, and if you want to be a full-time gatherer, you should be able to dedicate yourself to that out in the open world and be better at it than anybody else, and not just be a situation where someone who's good at raiding is the only person who can get everything with some level of efficiency.
Right. The next question I thought was of value, because we already talked about the one, was if most items are going to be player crafted or made by a real player, how will market how will the market handle when there's lower periods of activity within a game world? Do you guys feel like that's going to negatively affect economy if there's, for whatever reason, a low population server, or a point in time, like the WoW mentality of this latest expansion's pretty old, the next one's not coming for 6 months, I've got nothing left to do, I'm going to stop playing? I'm going to let Truth take this one because we've been bogarting all the time.
No, it's fine. No, absolutely. No, it's fine. So we're talking about, gosh, I'm sorry. I totally blanked on you there. My fault.
If everything's player crafted, if the majority of items we're getting is going to be player crafted, what happens in the time where there's lower activity on the server? How is that going to affect the market across the board?
I mean, I think that's pretty. I think that's pretty straightforward if you're using your basic economics there. I mean, that's going to kind of necessarily, I think, result in right. You got your good old supply demand curve, right? Demand's going down. What's going to happen? Supply's going down, right? That's something that Rocco, right, their economist, is going to certainly have to balance. But I don't know if you guys are probably experts on this. I mean, is there any way to combat that, or is that just something that happens with low activity? It can't be escaped.
It kind of depends if supply and demand are reducing at the same rate, or if for some reason you have the input into the economy, the gatherers and the crafters dropping off while the people buying most of the combat gear are still playing the game for some reason. You know, it might just be that they decrease equally and you don't really see an effect on price, or it could be something completely different. Maybe people get sick of gathering at the end of the expansion, but everybody's still playing. It'll depend a lot.
Yeah,
the obvious.
There's different dimensions in which periods of reduced activity are going to affect the market. I mean, there's at least, even on the supply side, there's two different components to that, because you've got maybe a shortage of actual input materials because there's fewer people running caravans or providing or harvesting, but then you've also got a potentially shortage of physical crafters who are actually the ones orchestrating the production process. I think it's hard to say which way it would go. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily wrong, though, for prices to increase if supply, is not sufficient to meet the demand that exists. I don't think it's necessarily evil, or it's necessarily bad to have certain types of inflation. I mean, you don't want sustained inflation over time, but maybe there is different periodicity or seasonality of demand throughout the day. Maybe you have to go a little bit out of your way to find a time to meet up with your crafter or your supplier. Like, I think those are the types of intrapersonal interactions that can be frustrating for people that have a limited amount of time to play, but ultimately can make the game feel a little bit more real and a little bit more grounded. I think if everything's always super predictable, then I don't know. I think that can take some of the interest away.
You made a point about rapid inflation, and we see that a lot in some of the more theme parky MMOs. Specifically, I want to point out like two of the ones that I played most recently, World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. The level of gold that was once upon a time, like during vanilla, if you had 500 gold, you were insanely rich. Whereas 500 gold wouldn't pay my repair bill in Legion, right? Like there's a level. How do you think Ashes would combat that level of inflation?
Well, do they want to? Because that's a very intentional choice that WoW is making, to devalue the gold of people who have been playing the game for years to make sure that everybody's competitive again. That's the point of having an expansion with gear resets to begin with, and just increasing your gold inputs exponentially into the economy for quest rewards and drops and things like that is just doing the same thing for currency.
However,
I think you can. Go ahead, Aggelos.
No, I was only going to play off of the fact, like, when he asked, would you want to? I would almost be like, why would you? In this game, specifically one of the node types, the economic node that's supposed to be ruled by, the elite oligarchy, which is the guys with the money, devaluing currency is, devaluing what essentially gives them their power base. Like, that's
the point. Yeah, it's to devalue the power of the existing player base while providing more of an opportunity for new players to make an impact on their own without starting out years and years behind.
I feel like that's go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I'm going to say the same thing you are. I mean, I think if Ashes gets to the point where that becomes a problem that they realistically need to solve as far as balancing the player acquisition and retention trade-off, then the game will have been wildly successful, and we'll all be very happy, because that's a kind of like 5-year down the road problem as far as like how do you make it easy for new players to join your game and feel like they're not starting out miles and miles behind. But and I think about your other point about like maybe it's okay if there is inflation, but I hope that they come up with a good system to keep, as I said earlier in the show, the sort of NPC economy aligned with the player economy. Like, I wouldn't want to see gold or the value of other commodities inflate dramatically over time while everything else that's been like programmed into the game world sort of stays static. I think that wouldn't be a good outcome. So like Blizzard had to go to a lot of trouble when they went through the process of changing some of the currency valuation to bring things throughout the entire game along with it, so that the cost of buying like a mount didn't make 0 sense at all. And that's a hard task. So I think what's important is that the game evolves together rather than just like having player resources skyrocket while the rest of the sort of NPC economy is static.
Right. Truth, do you have anything you'd like to add to this point?
Dude, I mean, you hit it. You just absolutely, you're stealing all my points, man. This is crazy. He's good. He's good.
That's why I bring them on. That's why.
That's right.
All you guys have been fantastic this episode, and I think we're kind of hitting the point here where we're at the end of this episode for this episode this week. Yeah, sorry guys. I mean, we talked about this, so we're gonna end this episode here. Obviously, we'll be back with probably the same crew again. For the next episode, obviously, because I'm going to make them come back. And we're going to finish up our stock exchange theory crafting section. And, well, that'll be an episode. So before we go, I want to let everyone do their little shout-outs where people can find you. Isarii, why don't you go ahead and tell people where they can find your lovely everything?
Oh, you know where to find me. I'll keep it short. You can find me at errantpenman.com and twitter.com/EthanMcPhee. And also where Atropos will be.
And where Atropos will be, which is also where you can probably find me. Atropos, how about you, sir?
Most actively within the ESO community still a little bit, but looking forward a lot to Ashes, and so I'll have a Ashes-related community project coming out hopefully in the very near future that I'm very excited about, and I hope that the rest of the Ashes community will really love once we get it out to you guys. You can reach me on Twitter at twitter.com/foundrynet. But I don't tweet a whole lot. Honestly, if you tweet to me there, you're probably tweeting at Isarii in reality.
It's true. I have conversations with myself, and
I'll have my people forward along,
Nice. I like it. And finally, Truth Eternal. Where can people find you, sir?
Yeah, so just on YouTube, if you want to participate in that cool community story we're putting together based in the Ashes world, just search Journal of Ashes. I also have a personal channel that'll be spinning up with a bunch of content soon. That's just Truth Eternal on YouTube. And if you just want to talk to me, hang out on Discord, just go to heavenlyswordgaming.com and you can find me there.
Excellent. Of course, you can find me on Twitter at Aggelos, AGGELOS_WF. And of course, follow the show and all the stuff that you'll see on the, as you look at this, the right-hand side at the end of this episode. All of our Twitter locations. DungeonCrawlerNetwork.com is where you can find us. YouTube.com/DungeonCrawlerNetwork if you like to watch these shows. And of course, you can find us wherever you find your podcast, RSS feeds, iTunes, Google Play, all that fun stuff. Thank you so much to my guest co-host for this episode of the Phoenix Roundtable and From the Ashes. I appreciate it, and we will see everyone next week.